I've heard people say that when someone dies, the world stops. That's not true. When my husband Michael died, the world didn't stop. The hospital machines did. His heart did, his voice did. But the world outside? Kids still cried in waiting rooms. Phones still rang. Someone down the hall laughed too loudly at something on TV. Only my world went quiet. He died on a Tuesday afternoon. Heart attack, they said. Sudden. Massive. They used words like unexpected and fast, as if speed somehow made it merciful. I sat in a plastic chair, fingers digging into my own knees, staring at the doctor's lips while he explained, but none of it stayed. All I heard was, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Carter. We did everything we could. Everything we could." The words echoed in my head as my daughter Grace clung to me, her face buried in my side, whispering, "No, no, no," over and over. We went through the motions. There were calls to make. His sister in Ohio. My mother, who went immediately into practical mode. "Do you need me to fly in? Have you called the insurance yet? Do you know which funeral home to use?" I wanted to say, "I don't even know how to walk to the car without him," but instead I said, "I'll figure it out." We had the funeral the following Saturday. Small, at his request. He was always practical like that. There were flowers he would have complained were too expensive, and a suit he hated wearing, and a framed photo at the front that didn't quite capture his face the way I knew it. People told stories. He was such a good man. He always helped without making a fuss. He loved you and Grace so much. I smiled and nodded and hugged and said thank you until the words lost any meaning at all. It wasn't until everyone left, after the last casserole had been forced into the fridge, after the last polite conversation at the door, that the real silence began. Grace went to her room, shut the door, and turned up her music. Too loud, but I didn't tell her to turn it down. I stood alone in the living room, staring at the empty armchair where Michael used to fall asleep with the TV remote in his hand. I thought grief would feel like someone had carved out a piece of me. Instead, it felt like the whole house was slightly off balance, like one leg of the table had been sawed a little shorter than the others. Nothing looked different, but everything wobbled. The next morning, the paperwork started. Death certificates, insurance forms, bank contacts, HR from his old company. Just sign here, initial there. Sorry for your loss. I moved through it in a fog. It wasn't until 2 weeks later, sitting at our small dining table with a stack of bank statements spread out like a fan, that I saw it. An account I didn't recognize, not our joint checking, not the savings we'd slowly built for Grace's college fund, not the mortgage. A line, halfway down the page, Carter Holdings savings account ending in 4921. Carter Holdings? I muttered, frowning. We didn't have anything called that. I thought maybe it was a mistake, a typo, someone else's paper stuck to ours. Then I checked the balance, and my heart stuttered. It was more money than we had ever had in any account, more than I had ever seen tied to our name. 6 figures, high 6 figures, and I had never heard of it. The world, which had been numb and gray for weeks, suddenly snapped into sharp focus. There was, apparently, a whole part of my husband's life I knew nothing about, and it was written in numbers. The next day, I went to the bank, not the small branch near our grocery store, where the tellers knew us by name and asked about Grace's soccer games. This was downtown, glass walls, suits, smiles that didn't reach eyes. I waited in a chair that was too low and watched a flat-screen TV silently loop ads about financial planning. "Mrs. Carter?" A man called. He was in his 40s, tie too tight, name tag reading Evan Senior Advisor. He led me into an office that smelled faintly of coffee and paper. "How can we help you today?" he asked, settling behind a desk that was too shiny. I handed him the statement. "I was going through my late husband's accounts," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I found this. I don't recognize it." He glanced at the paper, then at his computer, fingers flying over the keyboard. "Can I see your ID?" he asked. I handed it over. After a minute, he nodded politely. "Yes, this is under Michael Carter," he said. Open for almost 19 years. 19 years. My mouth went dry. Can you tell me what kind of account it is? I asked. He smiled that polished, professional smile again. Well, as you can see, it's a high-yield savings account under a holding name, he said. Pretty common. Many people use additional accounts for long-term planning, special purposes, that sort of thing. Special purposes. The words made my stomach twist. I didn't know about this, I said. We had a joint account. We had a college fund for our daughter. We talked about money. I thought we did. Anyway, he shifted awkwardly in his chair. I'm very sorry for your loss, he said. Legally, due to privacy and security, I'm limited in what I can say before processing the estate. But since he's deceased, and you are the spouse, once probate is underway, we can. Stop, I said softly. I don't need the legal script, I just need to understand. I stared at the screen, but he quickly tilted it away, like it was a reflex. How do I get access? I asked. Well, he replied, for that, we'd need the death certificate, some estate paperwork, and also, he hesitated, also what? I asked. There is a designated beneficiary on this account, he said carefully. The funds are set to transfer directly to that beneficiary, outside of probate. So to me? I asked. To our daughter? He looked down again, checked the screen, jaw tightening just a little. No, he said quietly. Not to you. Not to your daughter. Something cold slid into my spine. Then to who? I asked. He swallowed. I'm not sure I'm allowed to. I leaned forward. He is dead, I said, more sharply than I meant to. I am his wife. I found out he had a massive secret savings account for nearly 20 years. If you think I'm walking out of here without knowing who he named, you're wrong. For a moment, he just stared at me. Then, maybe out of pity, or guilt, or just exhaustion, he sighed. The named beneficiary, he said slowly, is a M's. Hannah Cole. The name meant nothing at first. No face flashed in my mind. No family member. No co-worker. Who is that? I whispered, more to myself than to him. I'm afraid I don't know, he said. What I can tell you is that this account is not part of the estate. It is a payable on death account. Legally, it goes to her. To a woman I've never heard of? I asked. He didn't answer that. On the drive home, the name kept repeating in my head. Hannah Cole. I tried to imagine her. Younger? Older? Pretty? Ordinary? Someone he worked with? Someone from before me. I pulled over in a parking lot because my hands were shaking too much to keep driving. He had been dead for 3 weeks, and somehow, I was more stunned now than when they called the time of death. That night, after Grace went to bed, I sat in the dark living room with my laptop open. I told myself I wasn't going to do it. I told myself that if I started, there would be no going back. Then I typed anyway. Hannah Cole. Too many results. Art teachers, real estate agents, a singer, a yoga instructor. I narrowed it down. Hannah Cole, Michael Carter, obituary, settlement, case. For a long time, nothing useful appeared. Then, on the third page somewhere people rarely scroll to, I saw a headline from almost 20 years ago. Local teen injured in hit-and-run driver remains unidentified. I clicked before I could talk myself out of it. The article was short. A 15-year-old girl named Hannah Cole had been struck by a car while crossing a street late at night on the edge of town. She survived, but with serious injuries. Police are still looking for the driver, it read. Witnesses describe a dark sedan driving away from the scene. I stared at the date, 19 years ago, right around the time the bank said that account was opened. My heart pounded. Michael had driven a dark sedan back then. He'd told me he sold it because it kept breaking down. I kept reading. There were follow-up articles. One about the fundraiser her school held for her hospital bills. One about her long recovery. One, a year later, about how the driver was never found. I leaned back, hands trembling on the keyboard. The rational part of me pushed back. It's a coincidence. Hannah is a common name. Cole isn't rare. You're trying to pin something ugly on a dead man because you're angry and hurt. But the account date, the beneficiary name, the dark sedan, I couldn't shake it. I searched again. This time, Hannah Cole settlement. A newer entry popped up, 6 years old. Court documents, difficult to read. A case number, words like private settlement, non-disclosure agreement, undisclosed party, undisclosed. My stomach turned. I closed the laptop. I sat in the dark, staring at nothing, the glow from the screen leaving ghost shapes behind my eyelids. For 13 years of marriage, I had believed I knew the man I slept beside, his favorite coffee, his hatred for loud restaurants, the way he always fell asleep during movies. Now, I wondered what else had been left out of that picture. I found them in a box in the garage, not neatly labeled, not in a safe, just an old cardboard box with office stuff scrawled on the side in fading marker. I was looking for something else, a folder with the car title, when the box tipped, spilling old notebooks and a tangle of chargers. At the bottom, under a stack of faded manila folders, I saw it. A thick envelope, no label, just our old address from years ago in the corner. Inside were papers, legal documents, most of the words blurred together at first. Party of the first part, hereby indemnifies, non-admissible, but certain phrases stood out. Confidential settlement, injury to minor, no admission of fault, ongoing support fund. Michael's name was there, so was Hannah's. There was a handwritten note clipped to the back, in his familiar, slightly slanted writing. If anything ever happens to me, this account goes to her. It doesn't make it right, but it's the least I can do. I sat down hard on the cold garage floor, papers trembling in my hands. He had hit her, my husband had been the driver. He had hurt a teenage girl, then spent nearly 2 decades secretly setting aside money for her. He had never told me. I didn't know, I whispered, as if he could hear me. You never gave me a chance to know. That night, I took the papers to my friend Lisa. She was the closest thing I had to a lawyer, working as a paralegal at a firm that loved complicated cases. We spread everything out on her kitchen island. This is a lot, she said, scanning the pages. Understatement of the year, I replied. She tapped a paragraph near the bottom. Here, she said, this line. Michael agreed to set up a long-term financial support vehicle, a fancy way of saying this secret savings account. It's intended for Hannah's benefit, not yours. Legally, it's pretty airtight. So that's it? I asked. All that money goes to a woman I've never met, because of something he did before we even got married? She nodded slowly. Unless you want to spend years in court, she said. And even then, odds aren't great. I rubbed my temples. Did he ever tell you anything? I asked. Back then, when you and he were working together? Lisa hesitated. He mentioned once that he'd made a mistake, she said. Said there was a girl who'd never walk the same because of him. I asked if he'd gone to jail. He said no. That was the end of it. He told you more than he told me, I said quietly. She winced. That's not fair, she said. We were in his office, buried under files. People confess weird half-truths at work. People also confess things to their wives, I replied. Or at least, they're supposed to. She didn't have an answer for that. Look, she said softly. What he did was awful. Hiding it from you? Worse. But this account. It's his way of trying to do something right with something he did wrong. That doesn't erase your hurt, but it matters. I stared down at the papers. The whole time I thought we were scraping by, I said. He was quietly building this for her. Not for us. Not for Grace. For a stranger. She's not a stranger to him, Lisa said. She's the girl he almost killed. The words hit me like a physical blow. I closed my eyes. I need to meet her, I said. Lisa looked at me sharply. Are you sure that's a good idea? No, I said. I'm not sure about anything, but if I'm going to live the rest of my life knowing my husband built a secret future for her, I at least want to see who she is. Finding her wasn't as hard as I expected. One of the documents had an address. Old, but not too far. I sat in my car outside a small, weathered house on a quiet street. Paint peeling, grass a little too long, a wind chime hanging lopsided on the porch. I almost drove away twice. What was I going to say? Hi, I'm the widow of the man who hit you with his car when you were a teenager, and I'd like to talk about the money he's been secretly saving for you for 20 years, but each time, I saw the number on that account in my mind, the way my stomach had dropped at the bank, the way my whole marriage felt like it had shifted sideways, so I got out. I walked up the steps, I knocked. The woman who opened the door was around my age, maybe a bit older, hard to tell. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun, strands escaping around her face. She wore a faded t-shirt and old jeans. A thin scar ran down one side of her leg, disappearing into the fabric. Her eyes were sharp. "Yes?" she asked. "Are you Hannah?" I asked. Suspicion flashed across her face. "Who's asking?" "My name is Evelyn," I said. "Evelyn Carter." She stared at me for a long second, then, slowly, something like recognition came into her eyes. "Carter," she repeated. "As in Michael Carter?" "Yes," I said. "He was my husband." "Was?" she asked. "He died," I said, "a few weeks ago." She leaned against the door frame, exhaling. For a second, I thought I saw something like grief there. Then it was gone. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't know." I nodded, though I didn't know what to do with those words. "Can I talk to you?" I asked, just for a few minutes. She hesitated, then she opened the door wider. "Come in," she said. The inside of her house was small but tidy. A couch with a knitted blanket, a coffee table with magazines stacked neatly, a framed photo of a teenage girl in a cap and gown. "Is that your daughter?" I asked. She glanced at the picture. "Yeah," she said. "Mia. She's at work." We sat on the couch, two strangers tied together by a man who was no longer alive. "I found out about the account," I said, "at the bank." Her jaw tightened. "I figured," she said. "I've been waiting for that call, or visit." "You knew he died?" I asked. She shook her head. "No," she said. "I just always knew this day would come. Secrets don't stay buried forever, especially not the expensive ones." There was no bitterness in her voice. "Not exactly, just tiredness." "How long have you known him?" I asked. She gave a small, humorless laugh. "Since the night his car threw me across a street," she said. "So about 20 years. I flinched. "I read about it," I said. "The accident, the settlement, the non-disclosure. Fancy word for hush money," she said. "But he never treated it that way." "What do you mean?" I asked. She leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "He showed up at the hospital," she said, "after they figured out it was him. He didn't send a lawyer first. He came himself. He cried. A lot. He offered to go to jail. My mother, God rest her soul, said that wouldn't fix my spine. So instead, they worked out that deal. Money over time. Enough to cover treatment, therapy, the things insurance doesn't care about." "You forgave him?" I asked. She shrugged. "I don't know if forgiveness is the right word," she said, "but I stopped hating him. Eventually. He came by sometimes, you know, brought groceries when I couldn't work, helped fix things around the house. We were never friends, exactly, but we weren't enemies anymore. The idea of my husband spending time at this house, fixing things, carrying groceries, while I thought he was working late or running errands, it made my chest hurt." "Did he ever tell you about me?" I asked. "Not at first," she said. "He mentioned you later, said he got married, had a daughter, said you were kind, strong, smarter than him." My eyes burned. "He never told me about you," I said. "Not once." She nodded slowly. "Yeah," she said. "I always thought that was wrong." We sat in silence for a moment. "Why didn't you take the money before?" I asked. "The account's been there for years." "Because I wasn't ready," she said simply. "Because as long as I didn't touch it, it felt like a promise he still had to keep. Now he's gone. The promise is just numbers." She turned to me. "I'm not going to take it all," she said. "I know that's what you're worried about." I blinked. "I didn't." "You did," she said gently. "It's okay. Anyone would. But listen, he set that up because he owed me something. I won't pretend he didn't. That money changed my life. Paid for surgeries, braces, Mia's textbooks. But I also know he had a life with you. A real one, not just a guilty conscience. If there's a way to share that in a way that doesn't land us both in court for 10 years, I'm willing to talk. I stared at her. You would give some of it back? I asked. She smiled faintly. I'm not a villain in your story, Evelyn, she said. I'm just in a different chapter. It turned out to be more complicated than either of us wanted. Legally, the account was hers. Paperwork, signatures, the whole thing. My lawyer and her lawyer sat across from each other in a conference room with a view of the city and argued about percentages. Hannah and I sat side by side, watching. This is surreal, she murmured. You're telling me, I replied. At one point, my lawyer leaned toward me. Understand, she said, we can attempt to contest based on marital asset laws, but the chances are slim. This was set up before your marriage. It falls into a gray area. A gray area, I repeated. That seems to be where I live now. What do you want? She asked. Bottom line, I thought about the number again, what it represented. Security, education for Grace, breathing room I didn't know we could have had all these years, but also, hospital rooms, pain, a girl in a crosswalk. I want to not feel like my entire life was built on a lie, I said. She sighed. I wish I could put that into legal language, she said, but I can't. In the end, it was Hannah who made the final call. She pushed the papers away. This is stupid, she said. We're arguing over money that came from a car accident like it's lottery winnings. Here's what I propose. I take half. You take half. We both sign that we won't pursue further legal action. We both walk away with enough to breathe. The lawyers were not thrilled. It's irregular, mine said. It's generous, hers said. It's human, she said, which is more than I can say for this process. They relented. When I signed my name on the line, I felt hollow. Not victorious, not grateful, just tired. Afterward, in the lobby, Hannah turned to me. This doesn't make us even, she said. Nothing ever will. But maybe it means we're not standing on opposite sides of a burning bridge. I nodded. Thank you, I said. I don't know what else to say. You don't have to say anything, she replied. Just don't let him become only this, in your memory. Okay, he made a terrible choice. Then he spent 20 years trying to live with it by trying to live better. I looked out the glass doors, at people walking by, unaware of the two women inside sorting through the mess left by one man's mistake. Did he? I asked. Live better. She thought for a moment. He tried, she said. More than some, less than others. But he never stopped showing up. That counted for something. The letter was in the last place I looked. Not because it was well hidden. Because I had avoided that drawer as long as I could. His nightstand. It still smelled like him when I opened it. A mix of his cologne and the cedar blocks he insisted on keeping there. Old receipts. A watch he never wore. A broken pair of glasses. And, at the bottom, an envelope with my name on it. Eve. No one else called me that. Just him. My hands shook as I slid a finger under the flap. The paper inside was creased like he'd folded and unfolded it multiple times, never sure if he was ready to give it to me. The handwriting was his, some parts darker than others, like he'd stopped and pressed too hard. Eve, if you're reading this, it's because something happened that I didn't see coming. And because I was a coward in one particular way, I never found the right time to tell you everything. You have always known the best parts of me. You saw the man who made your coffee, who read to our daughter, who cried at stupid commercials. You loved that man. I don't know if you would have loved the 19-year-old version of him. I'm not sure I do. There is something I never told you. Before I met you, I hit someone with my car. I was driving too fast, too late, too distracted. A girl Hannah stepped into the street. I still don't know if she didn't see me or if I didn't see her. All I know is that one moment I was alone in the car, and the next moment I wasn't. I didn't stop right away. That is the part that keeps me up at night. I drove half a block before my brain caught up with what my body had done. Then I turned around, called 911, watched them load her into an ambulance. Her mother wanted me in prison. I almost went. Part of me still thinks I should have. The lawyers did what lawyers do. They made deals, a settlement, a non-disclosure. I signed. I agreed to that account. At first, I told myself I'd tell you when we got serious. Then I told myself I'd tell you when we got married. Then when Grace was born. Then I told myself that if I didn't tell you, I could be a better man in the present, instead of begging forgiveness for the past. I see now that was selfish. I was protecting myself from seeing disappointment in your eyes. I know you, Eve. You think you hide it, but your face tells the truth. Hannah is not my mistress. She is not my secret family. She is my consequence. I went to see her sometimes, to fix a porch step, to change a light bulb, to remind myself that I didn't get to move on completely just because the papers were signed. I should have told you. You deserve to know the whole of the man you married, not just the edited version. If you hate me now, I understand. If this ruins the way you remember our life, I am so sorry. That is the opposite of what I wanted. I didn't give you this letter when I was alive because I wanted more time as the man you thought I was. That is the ugliest truth in here. All I can ask selfishly, again, is that you remember both. The man who tucked Grace in, and the man who did something unforgivable. I tried to spend the last 20 years living in a way that made the worst thing I ever did not the only thing I ever did. For what it's worth, every day with you and Grace was the part of my life I'm most proud of. I love you, Michael. P.S. The box in the garage has all the paperwork. I know you'll find it. You always do. Hannah will need someone patient on the other side of this. I wish I could be there. By the time I finished, the paper was damp with my tears. I didn't know how to feel: angry, grateful, betrayed, seen. I folded the letter back up carefully and put it on my nightstand. I didn't forgive him. Not instantly, not completely, but for the first time since the bank visit, I felt something other than raw hurt. I felt context, and context is not the same as excuse. A year later, the house feels different. Some of that is practical. We used part of the money to pay off the mortgage, to set aside a real, substantial fund for Grace's future, to fix the roof he always promised he'd get around to. The rest went to Hannah. She used some for a better car, some to finally get a surgery she'd been putting off, and some, she told me, she set aside for Mia. "We're not so different, you and I," she said once, over coffee at my kitchen table. "We both loved versions of him that don't exist anymore. We see each other sometimes, not often. We're not suddenly best friends, bonded by tragedy like in some movie, but when we do meet, we talk about ordinary things, work, our daughters, the way the weather won't make up its mind, and sometimes, when we're feeling brave, we talk about him." Grace knows most of the truth now, not all the legal details, not the numbers, but enough. "Dad made a big mistake," I told her, "and he spent a long time trying to live with it." "Do you hate him?" she asked. I thought about it. "No," I said. "Sometimes I hate what he did. Sometimes I hate that he didn't tell me. But hate him? No. Loving someone doesn't mean pretending they never did anything awful. It just means you carry all of it, the good and the bad, and you decide what to do with the weight." She nodded, frowning in that thoughtful way she got from him. "Do you wish you never found out?" she asked. I looked around the house, at the repaired roof, at the photo of us at the beach, years ago, sand in our hair, at the empty armchair. "I wish he'd told me himself," I said. "But I don't wish it wasn't true. Wishing doesn't change anything, knowing does." Sometimes, late at night, I sit at the table where I first saw the bank statement and think about paths, the version of my life where he told me the truth early, where we carried it together, the version where I never found out, and lived the rest of my life thinking my husband was simply a good man who died too soon, the version I actually got lies somewhere in between, a good man who did something awful, a flawed man who tried to make amends in a flawed way, a husband who trusted me with everything except the worst part of himself. I can live with that, I say out loud sometimes, just to see if it still feels true. Most days, it does. On the not-so-good days, I take out the letter, I read his messy confession, I let myself feel angry again, then I fold it up and put it back. He didn't get to choose how I remember him, but I get to choose. I choose to remember the whole, not because he deserves it, but because I do. Because the alternative is living in a story with missing chapters, and I've had enough of those. So when people ask about my husband now, I tell them, he was a good man who made a terrible mistake and tried very hard to live with it. I loved him, I was hurt by him, and I lived on after him. Sometimes they don't know what to say. That's okay, not all endings are neat, some are just honest, and that, I've learned, is its own kind of peace.